So it's really a pleasure being here, and thanks to Viv and all the people at Big Picture and all of you all, something that was nothing turned into something. This whole room is filled, and that's a wonderful thing for me to stand up here and see that, really. It's pretty amazing. This is about making it big, and I'm going to really focus a talk around making and fabricating and tinkering and doing something while you're doing nothing, or at least it looks like you're doing nothing when you're doing something. That's a big deal, and schools don't usually give the time for that. They usually give the time for this, where somebody's up in the front, and hopefully everybody else is listening. We brought in craftspeople, inventors, blacksmiths, woodworkers, seamstresses, with our students, who are also all of those things, and we sat down for 3 days at this fair, and we did kind of an anthropological study of making and why it isn't in schools the way it should be. And one of the things that we came up with, and this is a slide, is that basically schools are turn the page, turn the page, turn the page, the logical brain. But we act and behave very differently in the real world. We behave in a more spirally way, where we go deeper and deeper and go backwards and forwards. And our learning is practice. And one of the students kept on saying, better at. I want to get better at and better at and better at. And another part of that is self-assessment. The most powerful form of assessment is self-assessment. And we don't spend hardly any time asking students how they think they did on things that matter to them. That's a big deal. We're always telling them how they did, without even asking whether they want to know. We have a problem all over the world, and you hear about it. And this is an article that I put out in front of you all. It's about this guy, Mr. Potato Head. How many, you have Mr. Potato Head here? Just a few of you know Mr. Potato Head? Okay, that's better. That's better. So this is Mr. Potato Head now. He's an avatar on Second Life. You can't touch him. All right? And this is Toy Story, a movie that Mr. Potato Head had a second life on. And you can be Mr. Potato Head on Second Life, but you don't touch him anymore, and this is an issue. So these are the old Mr. Potato Head kits from when I was a kid, and I'll tell you about the story about Mr. Potato Head, about a guy who came back from World War II and played with his parents' potatoes and vegetables in the garden and made these little characters. And he said, I'm going to make a toy out of this. So he made a toy, and the toy actually did very, very well. The problem is that moms and dads would find the potatoes in some places in the house after their children were playing with underneath the sofa. They were rotting. So they had to change them, and they made them into this styrofoam kit over here. And the pieces broke off. That's when I found Mr. Potato Head. I was about 1956, 57. I was born in 51. So that wasn't good, and we would eat the pieces, and so they made them plastic. And then they put holes in them where you couldn't put the holes. So originally, you could put the holes anywhere you wanted in Mr. Potato Head, and that was half the fun. You'd see what would happen. And there he is, and there's Mr. Potato Head up there, and he's evolving. He had a pipe at the beginning, and they took away his pipe. C. Everett Koop did, the Surgeon General, and they made him the head of the No Smoking campaign. So now they got his pipe. You can't mess around with his parts. He's not a potato anymore. He's a piece of plastic. So what I'm going to ask people to do, as we're doing this work, and I'm talking to you, I made some Mr. Potato Head stuff, but only out of vegetables and toothpicks and stuff. So I'm going to ask 8 people, and then ask some people to come up here. And as I'm talking, they're going to be making potato heads. And we're going to ask them afterwards, or in a little while, we're going to give them about 15 minutes to make those potato heads as I'm talking to you. And you're going to see something happen. And I didn't tell them anything more, but you can watch them, or you can watch me. You can throw those lights around, because we're made to do more than one thing at the same time. We're especially not made to do this. We're very bad at sitting in a seat listening to one person for a very long time. And so this conference and this meeting is going to be about moving around a lot, looking at what the tinkerers are doing, seeing what they have, and then being able to talk about it. Because when you make something, you're able to talk about it afterwards. So in our schools, taking the time to practice at the things that you really want to get good at take time. When is there time to do that type of practicing? And I would argue that every young person alive has those things that they want to practice at, make mistakes, get better at what they're trying to do. And school does very, very little to develop that type of talent. And the research shows, by a guy named Benjamin Bloom, that that is true. We don't develop talent in young people. It's developed by people on the outside. And why shouldn't it be developed by people on the inside of schools when students are spending most of their time there? So let me go over to the table here. Let's see what we got.
I started off with a corn, but then I realized I couldn't stick anything into it, except for the ends of a toothpick. He's got a mullet. And he's also got like a neck scarf, the kind that often classical music composers have, like in the olden Middle Age, medieval times.
Okay, this is my potato. He doesn't have a name, but he's very sad. I think he used to be a king of some sorts until his wife, filled his glass of carrot juice with weed killer or something. Left him for, a young corn on the cob. And now he roams the lands that he once ruled as some sort of zombie potato spud thing.
This is Chief Potato. I thought that the more vegetables you got, the more you had for lunch. He's sitting on his cauliflower throne with peas for legs and cauliflower for shoes. Those two things in the middle there are actually his eyeballs. They're not two other things with nipples. And these things on the side of his head are his braids, the colourful braids, and he's got his cloak at the back, his chief cloak. He hasn't said much lately, yeah. But he was pretty dirty looking, so he had to cover up quite a bit. Kia ora.
Small manufacturing with a small m, where you're making things that you can sell and make a living off of and feel good about yourself and raise a family and be part of a community around the things that you like to do. It sounds old, but it's going to be a new way of being. It can't all be about going to Walmart or Costco and just consuming things that are made by other people and forgetting how we make things ourselves. And so creativity and Mr. Potato Head is the start. And if you saw that little piece, when you put something in your hand and talk about it and demonstrate it and made it yourself, you're creating narrative. Narrative is who we are. We're storytellers, we're makers. In schools, are we storytellers? Are we makers? Is that who we are? Or are we consumers? We're consuming information in school the way we're consuming goods at a Costco. And that's the thing that we have to say, okay, there's a place for that. It's got to be a smaller place in this world. And the larger vision is really for everybody to be a producer and everybody feel good about themselves.